So, good afternoon. Welcome back to a brand new episode of Lead the Way Pod. Now, today I have Ashley. Ashley, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. So my name's Ashley Johnson. I run a company called Hire Limited, and we help businesses partner with local charities to create a big impact in their local communities.
So, what actually got you into that?
So it all started back in 2016, the journey, but it didn't become a business until 2024. So my daughter, Lena, she was born premature at 25 weeks, and we spent 11 weeks in the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, where we had all of the ups and downs that you would expect in that sort of environment. And then in 2022, my son was born, and he had tetralogy of Fallot. And so, although we weren't in the neonatal intensive care unit for as long as we were with our daughter, we then had 2 years worth of CICU, which is cardiac intensive care unit. And during that time, you feel, to begin with, quite isolated. You feel alone. You feel like you're the only ones going through it, which is ridiculous when you think back, because you could see around you that other people were going through it. But in the initial phases, you do feel like you're alone. And then you see all of this wonderful community that's out there to help parents going through it. So we had old ladies knitting hats, knitting clothing, stitching blankets. We had charities giving families grants to keep them going, providing accommodation. So with my son, the Sick Children's Trust provided us with accommodation close to the Great Ormond Street Hospital, which was handy for us. And seeing all of that stuff go on and learning about the smaller, less known charities that are out there, I decided that my goal and my focus would be to help those smaller charities get the exposure they deserve, to create the impact that they want to create, and to also just make people aware of how much we rely on charities, especially the smaller ones. There's a charity called Help Appeal, for example, and they help with the planning and installation of helipads at hospitals.
That's incredible. And obviously, it really is crucial to help smaller charities because they don't get enough recognition for what they do.
The big charities do a lot of really useful work, and we're so glad that they exist. But if you donate, say as an average person, you donate £100, you're not going to see that money realistically. It's going to go into starving costs, advertising, perhaps thinly across all of the projects that they have going on at the time. So the impact, you can't see it. And oftentimes you wonder, well, actually, did it have any impact at all? Whereas if you take a smaller charity, because they're focused on the local community, that £100 will really go into something that you can see. So a good example of this is I'm currently working together with a dad. He is part of the Help Bank community that we're both a part of, as you know, Carl. And his child is in and out of hospital, and he found it very difficult to apply to get some funding to help him with the travel costs, the food costs, and everything for the time that he had to spend off. And so his idea is that he wanted to create a charity that enabled families whose children have been in the hospital for more than 5 days to receive a £200 grant within 24 to 48 hours. Whereby the bigger charities have a 6-week wait. They sometimes have income requirements as well. So if you just go over the threshold, you don't qualify for them. But in that situation, you are buying a meal every single day. You're traveling to and from the hospital every single day. These are not things that you would normally budget for. You're still going to suffer a bit financially. So I feel it's a really good thing that he's doing, and I'm helping him to achieve that dream, and I'll be promoting him to the companies that I work with.
That's incredible. And I understand what you mean about obviously you sometimes with the bigger charities you don't see where your money is directly going, and I suppose that's what puts some people off from actually donating to the big charities because they think, well, is it going into the CEO's back pocket? But with the smaller charities, they usually tell you or at least show you where your money's going.
Yeah, no, I get the point that some people would say, like, that it goes to the CEO. But if you want someone who's really good at managing projects, managing money, effectively a CEO, as if you'd hire in the private sector, you have to put the money in. Unfortunately, people aren't going to work for free. And actually, you shouldn't expect them to work for free neither. And people often see like, like the CEOs getting, I don't know, 120 grand a year. They are spending 60 grand a month on advertising on Facebook and all of this other stuff. Why are they doing that? Why can't they use that money, for example, to help in the areas that they're saying they're helping? Well, the fact of the matter is, one, as I've explained with the CEOs, to get the right talent that can deal with managing the projects and managing the staff and the operation costs and everything else, you have to pay a decent rate for that. Otherwise, you're going to get someone that's inexperienced, and oftentimes that ends up in losing more money as a whole than it is to invest in someone who's got the background and the knowledge. On the fact of the advertising, yes, they pay large amount, but actually the donations that they get from people becoming aware of what they're doing is 3-4 times their spend on ad. So actually it does make sense, but I do understand the frustration. I also think that in some cases the bigger charities are better for certain things and the smaller charities are better for other things. I think that there's a place for both. But what I find is with businesses in particular, because they want to look good, and CSR can sometimes be a tick box. It's not always a tick box. Some companies are really, really, caring about their local community and want to help, and they have a drive to do good. But others, it's just a tick box exercise. And especially if they don't have the time and the resources to do the research, they often just pick a big name charity because it makes them look good. It gives them a tick in that box, makes them look good, and it increases. I suppose they feel like if they support a massive charity, that it's going to give them much better PR than to support a local one. But actually, especially small to medium-sized businesses, if you invest in your local community, people are going to notice it. And people are going to associate your brand with doing something good, and they'll associate it with a brand that does something good that they can see as consumers, right? That's why I find the project that Morrison's do with their local community champions really, really good. That each store has its own little community champion, and they get to decide how they spend. They get a budget, and they get to decide where they spend it in their local community. That is a really good initiative.
No, 100%. And as you said, if you donate to a small charity or even a business, everyone's going to notice. Everyone's going to see the difference,
and the impact is going to be big.
It is.
Say you give £50,000, for example, to Shelter, big national homeless charity, right? They've got projects in Scotland. They've got projects all over the country, essentially. Right. So if you give them 50 grand, that money's going to go into the costs of the overall operations, but also spread thinly unless you specify it amongst all of the different projects that they've got. Whereas if you go to a local charity, say here in Norwich, that deals with homelessness, and you give them 50 grand, they can help way more people in this small area.
And that's just incredible, isn't it? Being able to see your community come together and thrive and just help each other as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good to have a strong community, isn't it?
Yes.
So obviously we, after this recording, we'll be going to a NICU hospital, won't we?
We will, yeah. So we're going to the hospital where both my children were brought to the world. the hospital that saved my wife's life when she was diagnosed with preeclampsia, and the hospital that also helped save her grandfather's life when he was over here on hospital with blood on the brain. So we will be going there today. I have my daughter with me. She will come on for 5 minutes towards the end of the podcast. But we have a ton of donations, both donated by yourself. You've got a couple of donations to give. We've brought nappies, wipes, clothes for the babies on the neonatal ward, and my daughter has also got a bag of books to donate to the Jenny Lind, which is more of the children's pediatric side of the hospital.
For my donations, there was 2 brands that actually helped and wanted to put something in there. So I want to thank Into the Eve and Randall's for their kind contribution towards it. These staff will absolutely appreciate it, and they work tirelessly, so they really need it.
They do. I've got a story about that. So when my daughter was in the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, there was part way through the time she was in there, there was a strike against pay. Every single nurse and doctor in the neonatal unit refused to go on strike, even though it was in their interest for pay, because they did not want to see those children get into trouble. It just shows you how incredible the nurses are in the neonatal, and probably in the standard intensive care as well, to be honest. The ones that deal with critical, life-threatening conditions, they chose deliberately not to partake in the strikes in order to make sure that the kids were okay, in our case. So yeah, they're brilliant, they're amazing, they do such a wonderful job.
And that must get quite emotional as well, like seeing how hard and tirelessly they work.
Oh, it does. Even talking about it, like I don't know whether the camera picked it up, but I did at one point during talking about them not going on strike, well up a little bit inside. It does. It gives you a much bigger appreciation of the NHS and how wonderful it is. People complain, obviously, about the waiting times and stuff like that, but I think, in terms of critical care, they are by far the best institution that I've ever known. And I've lived in Europe. I've been in the private healthcare system. And also, if you're private in the UK, if you have a life-threatening emergency, 9 times out of 10, the private hospital will send you to an NHS hospital, because first response, they are absolutely world class.
No, 100%, and you're doing really well as well.
Thank you.
I see what a great father you are. Mine was just Nat Cafe.
Yeah.
You made me feel really welcome and comfortable, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, as I said, you do a really good job, and people need to see that as well.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of I've got a lot of potential to educate as well, especially in the space of the NICU and children, having children with complex health conditions, because a lot of the time when parents leave the NICU, it's the woman that tells her story. It's also the woman that's the focus of support, and that's great. That's perfect. I've got nothing wrong with that. But I feel like the fathers get left behind a little bit, and they're too afraid to share their story with the rest of the world. And I think that comes from the fact that we as fathers, we're the pillar of strength, or we need to be the pillar of strength at that time. So even though we're going through the same emotions as our partners, we're having to hide it and bottle it up, and that is really bad on mental health. And so I feel like by telling people about my story, it will open up other fathers to be able to tell their story, so that we can then help shape the support for fathers going forwards. The thing is, my wife got all this support for the trauma of the pregnancy, My wife will openly admit and say to anybody that asks her, she has no idea what happened, because we got into the hospital and the first thing that happened was she was drugged up to try and get her blood pressure under control. She was dazed out. She was just lying there. The nurses were putting needles in. She wasn't moaning. She wasn't she had no idea what was going on. And it wasn't until a day after the birth that she started getting the flood back of the memories. But at the same time as she was zoned out, I was hearing things like, "Oh, the baby's heartbeat is slowing down. Oh, we can't get this blood pressure under control. We need to act fast, otherwise we'll lose mother and baby." I'm hearing these phrases. I don't know what to do. And you want to help, but you can't. So I have to sit back and I have to hope and pray that it turns out all right. And luckily it did turn out all right. But at that time I was struggling with my mental health. But the focus on me didn't come until right at the end of the NICU. So yeah, I think that more can be done for fathers when it comes to having children with complex health conditions.
But even with general mental health, men are obviously brought up to bottle it up, not speak about it, to be the stronger one in the relationship. And when men obviously bottle it up, it increases suicide rates, and it makes men worse off. And supposedly we have to try and hide it, but it's not easy. It's not.
Yeah, it's an old-fashioned thing. There's a lot of initiatives happening at the moment to try and get men to openly discuss their feelings. But I think the major issue is when you're growing up and you're crying, what's the first thing your parents say to you?
Man up.
Man up. Grow up. Stop being a little girl. Right?
Yeah.
That's even a phrase that's been used, right? So you just learn to bottle it up. And if you ask any man, they did a thing where they went round and asked men, if you're really depressed, who would you phone? And all of them went, no one, nobody cares. And that's so sad, because the thing is with women, they've got this emotional network. They talk about their feelings more openly. If they're depressed, they have little get-togethers. Let's try and help
Mother's meeting.
Yeah. Whereas for men, I think a lot of men do have friends that they could potentially rely on in a crisis. I've got a good friend called Darren, and when we were going through our lowest point with our son having his 2 open heart surgeries, he came deliberately down to London to take us out for the day while he was while he was going through the operation. He took us for a meal. He took us round. He took my daughter for a meal as well, took her out for a little while. And those are the types of friends that would really come during a crisis. But because you've grown up feeling like your emotions don't matter, that you're a man, you should be immune to, all of this stuff, and that it shouldn't affect you, and you should be the rock. And that's what causes the high suicide rate. That's the point I was trying to get at, is that we don't feel like we've got an outlet. So yeah, I'd really love to do more to open up for men. So I did a TikTok a while ago where I told fathers directly that you're doing the best you can, and that it might sometimes not feel like it, but you're an important part to the process. And a guy actually wrote back to me and said, thanks, I'm going through it now. I really needed to hear that. So that just shows you the power of just one person like myself speaking out for the men.
There's a really good guy in Helpbank called Chris. And what he does is men's mental health.
We Power On.
We Power On.
Yeah. I've seen him about. He's a great guy. I think he also was one of the finalists, wasn't he, or the winners of the Helpbank / Super Team? Is it?
I think so.
Yeah, Super Team of the 10K coaching or whatever it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I actually interviewed him. I think it was the second or third episode, but he's so inspirational, and I think it'd be really good if if you two done some form of
I'd
collaboration.
love to collaborate with him. I'd love to collaborate with anyone, to be honest, within the communities that we're part of. I think that's the power of Help Bank as well, isn't it? The power of help, and I don't want us to turn into a Help Bank thing. I know I mentioned it, but yeah, if you do have an aspiration to do something, either in business or to help with mental health or other bits and pieces, it's really important to have a good community around you. And I find that Help Bank is a really good community to be part of. And if it wasn't for that community, I wouldn't be sat across from you now. So it just goes to show how powerful community is.
And I think it's important to say as well how we actually spoke together. So we were in a group for quite a long time, and
Yeah.
I felt quite demotivated, crying a little bit as well, I will admit. And I put a voice note in the group chat, didn't I,
Yes, you
saying that I
did,
was
yeah.
struggling, and I got a response. So we had a. It was meant to be a 5-minute call that turned into a 2-hour call. So obviously that's how we were introduced to each other.
Yeah. And the thing is as well that as well as what I'm doing, the work that I'm doing in the community to raise awareness, I've got my daughter in the corner who will maybe answer a few questions that you have from a perspective of a sibling.
So thank you for sitting in the chair and coming on. Now you are officially the youngest person that I've actually ever had on the podcast. So please, could you tell me what it was like when your brother was going through that?
It was like very scary, but also I didn't really know what was happening because he was like crying and everything, and I was so young that I couldn't really know anything from him.
Yeah, of course you were so young, but obviously you're really lucky because he's doing well now, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about how you feel now about it all?
I feel quite happy because I'm so lucky to have like a brother who actually survived 2 heart surgeries. Also, he was born with a hole in his heart, in his lung artery, so he had to get 2 heart surgeries.
And that is obviously really lucky that's all worked out, and obviously
Yeah.
God sent down a guardian angel for you
Yeah.
both. He really
Yeah.
did. And I'm sorry if none of you are religious, but God really was there for you both at that time.
Yeah.
Thank
He
you so
was.
much for sharing your experience. Obviously, it's important to speak to your dad about it, of course, but also you and your brother who have been through it. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, so obviously my daughter was a bit nervous coming up and speaking to you for the for the first time, but yeah, she said most of the stuff that she says to other people behind the camera. The only other bit that she usually talks about is the separation. So essentially, when my son was down at the Great Ormond Street Hospital, she still had to attend school. I still had to go to work. Obviously, the Great Ormond Street Hospital is 170 miles away, roughly, from us. So what happened is that my wife would be down in London, staying at one of the Sick Children's Trust or the Great Ormond Street Hospital accommodation. We'd be up here, and then on the Friday we would go down and then spend Saturday and Sunday in London. But my daughter is a mummy's girl, and so that really affected her mental health, having that separation. Also, another thing that really affected her was that whenever she went to school, like say Luca had been allowed to come home again, she didn't know whether it would be her mum picking her up and everything was fine, or her dad picking her up to tell her that Luca had gone into hospital again and that her mum was there with him. So it was a really emotional roller coaster for her to go through. And we tried to make the best of it as we could. So she did, when we went down to London, we took her on a tour bus, we took her to Buckingham Palace. She got some items out of the Harry Potter store because she was into Harry Potter at the time. So we were trying to make it normal, but again, when you're close to your mum, and then all of a sudden she's gone for 4 weeks, and you can only speak to her on the telephone. Also, the fact that I had to work, she had to still study. It just like for a kid, I can't imagine what it's like for a kid. That's what I'm saying. I can't imagine what it's like for a kid to go through it. And you do kind of want to shield them from what's going on, but at the same time, you need them to understand what's going on.
So yeah, thank you for joining.
Thank you
an
for
episode.
having me.
Really appreciate it.
Have a good day.
You too.